Perfect. We are going to dive right in. So if you're just joining us, we're excited to have you. Like I was saying before, this is our webinar all about all things endurance. And this is a coast-to-coast international webinar. We have multiple countries represented on the call, as well as people from East Coast, Mid-country, and West Coast. So thank you for joining. I know this will be the very first question you ask, so let me just say this loud and proud. We are going to be recording this webinar. That is my cue for Kelly, our Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, to hit the record button. This will be recorded and it's shared with you. We are also using that Q&A that we just practiced with. So as you have questions during this webinar, please, please, please enter them into the Q&A. We do our best to monitor the chat too, but if we run out of time, that question log saves for us, and so we can follow up with you after we conclude. We only have 56 more minutes together, so we're going to try to get through as much content as possible and get as many questions answered as we can. As most of you probably know, and hopefully this isn't your first Turnkey webinar, but if it is, welcome. Turnkey is doing our very best during this time to bring you information just as fast as we can get it. We hear from clients and friends in the space, hey, we really need to know more about this. And I promise you within 48, 72 hours, we have some type of blog, resource, webinar, small group discussion available to you. So that is what we are working on and trying to be great partners for you in this space. If there's anything you have questions about or want to know about, or hey, I really wish there was more information about this, send it our way and we will do our best to help you in this time. Want to introduce myself. There we go. My name is Megan Rouse, and I actually wear two hats with Turnkey. I'm our Director of Partnerships, and I also work as a consultant in our peer-to-peer space. Sorry, it is advancing slowly. Want to introduce as well our amazing panelists. And I am not a fan of reading bios, but we have 4 really special panelists on this call, so I'm going to do a little bit of reading. Originally on this call, I had a lot of content prepared of kind of what I am seeing in this space and what I think is going to happen. And then all of a sudden, these 4 amazing folks said, oh, heck yes, we'll be on that webinar. So we have changed this. We're going to spend a lot of time picking these brilliant minds while we have them on this call. First up is Tracy Evans. And this is actually her modeling debut picture, I believe. This was for, is this your lens crafter photo, Tracy? Oh, you're on mute.
Someone just won bingo with that one. That Modern Eyes in Bismarck, North Dakota. Yes.
Sorry. Yes.
My modeling debut right there.
Yes. So Tracy is an international model. I'm going to go with that. So she's an avid cyclist, model, adventurer, and activist. She is the ride director for the AIDS Life Cycle, which, if you're not familiar with, is the annual fundraising event for the Los Angeles LGBT Center and San Francisco AIDS Foundation. Prior to AIDS Life Cycle, she was the National Director of Fundraising and Development at the Lupus Foundation of America and spent 11 years on the national staff of Team in Training, which is where I know her from, as part of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. When Tracy is not in Oakland with her wife and cats, she's in LA living her best Hollywood life. Yeah. Tracy, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Megan.
Next up, we have Colin, who is works as a senior director at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and he actually serves on the leadership team overseeing Team in Training and their big climb. Colin has worked for LLS for nearly 11 years and is responsible for the virtual activation and execution of Team in Training fundraising, cultivation, and endurance training and coaching programs. And he's also overseeing all of the technology implementation that comes with all of that fun stuff of going virtual. Colin is an avid runner, a husband, and the father of a beautiful 22-month-old who we may or may not see during this call, as we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Likely.
Yes, we're keeping our fingers crossed that she'll stay on nap schedule. But if you see her, she's also a little star on the show. And Colin is in Asheville, North Carolina. Colin, thanks so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
Next, we have Chris Wow, who is the Associate Vice President for Bike MS of the National MS Society. Her role includes developing this, there's Taco, my puppy. Chris's role includes developing the strategy for Bike MS series to ensure all cyclists have an extraordinary experience. She's been with the society for over 16 years and currently lives in Kansas City with her teenage daughter, Taylor. So Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Sure.
And last but not least, we have our good friend Asher Garfinkel, and he is the Vice President of Community Outreach for the ALS Association Golden West Chapter, which serves an area of 31 California counties and the entire state of Hawaii. For over 4 years, he has overseen all fundraising, awareness, and educational and other outreach events for the chapter. And prior to ALS, he was the executive director for the Los Angeles and Central Coast offices of the Arthritis Foundation. Before that, he worked in programs, event logistics, and fundraising at the March of Dimes. He lives in Los Angeles and has some film experience and knowledge that we're going to tap into today because he is doing some really great things helping his virtual events along. So a virtual round of applause for our amazing panelists. I'm just going to pretend everyone is up in their seats. I can feel the energy coming back at us, right? Wanted to talk a little bit about my opinion because like I said, I'm going to give you about 10 minutes of Megan Rouse brain, and then we are just going to dive into these brilliant minds. Can it actually work? Can we take endurance and go virtual and raise money for our organizations while we do this? So wanted to start a little bit about where we were. I have a couple of photos here, and if you're new to the endurance space, maybe you haven't experienced the joy that is event day. I mean, my heart is racing just looking at this, especially that middle one. That is the swim start of a triathlon, and I have to brag that I am a great swimmer, but every time I step into that scenario, my heart is like, can we really do this? Are we really sure? So I really wanted to have a visual presentation here of where we were. Race day for so many of maybe you on the phone or your participants is we always say race day, best day. It is the greatest day. You work so hard, you train so long through all the blood, sweat, tears, chafing stories, bathroom stories, whatever you got to get to that spot. This is like your day of celebration. I love Colin. Colin is an avid runner. I am not an avid runner. I run for race day and I run to raise money. So this is like the greatest day. And so what does that look like? And what does that mean if it doesn't necessarily look like this anymore? How do we engage that, that sense of community, that pride, that joy? I think my heart rate has gone up just thinking about race day. I mean, Marine Corps marathon, a bike ride triathlon, race day is the greatest day. Can this actually work if it's just me in front of my Zoom camera trying to do this virtually with my community? So I'm going to talk a little bit about Ride to start with. Can we really engage folks in this way? And I want to talk about a little company called Peloton. I don't know if anybody's heard of them. They are having maybe the best season right now. This is Robin. If you have not met my good friend Robin, and I say good friend because I take some of her classes, I feel like she knows me. We're the same person. I feel really good about her. I connect with her weekly. I don't have a Peloton, but I do her strength classes. I run with her. And she is like my personal coach. So if you don't know Robin, please Google her after this call. It may change your quarantine life. But Peloton just had a class, their largest class that had over 23,000 people live. This was not people at the recording or coming back to it later. This was live in the class, 23,000 people. And if you've seen any of the communication around Peloton, you've seen it's a tribe. It's this community that lives, breathes, and dies Peloton. I mean, they're super excited. And so there is a way to come together virtually and have an amazing experience. I will tell you that when I take one of Robin's classes, it is I feel so empowered and so great. And it is definitely a replacement or a supplement to that joy that I get at those events that we talked about. Also, I just want to put on our radar too, I'm not sure if everyone has seen or heard of the Great Cycle Challenge. I love this organization. I love this event. They have always been virtual and done really great things. So if you're not following them or peeking on kind of what they're doing, this is a great example of someone who's been virtual the whole time and has a really great track record. They engage with their participants in a really fun and meaningful way, and obviously bring that community together to raise millions of dollars. Okay, running. I think I really wanted to separate ride and run because I feel like it's two very different things. Cycle, there's so many ways to engage in terms of being on the Peloton or riding on our trainers or using some of the technology that some of our panelists are going to talk later, things like Swift and things like that, run. What does that mean? And how do we make this a virtual experience that is fun and or I can raise money? I run every day around my neighborhood, so why is all of a sudden having a virtual run any different than that of my normal routine? Wanted to share a couple of things that I have seen that I have really, really been enjoying. I don't know if anybody has seen some of these fun runs. So this is the stay-at-home virtual race. This was local in my area, but they had so much fun with this. You could run this 10K or 5K. We all did it on this day. And they really had a good time with the swag that you got. They even had reviews because you're running this at your house. And so the reviews were like, if someone had told me the course was going to look like this, I never would have run it. Or this looks exactly like my run every day. Like, why did this change? They just, again, they had fun and kind of broke through some of that clutter and noise that is taking over some of our virtual space capability or opening. These you've probably seen as well. These are, again, really fun. The jogging 5K. These virtual challenges where they're having good fun with things that are currently happening, the great toilet paper chase, the coronavirus relief. And so these are challenges that there's not necessarily fundraising attached to these. Some of the money goes back to charity, but it's a great way that they're engaging thousands of people. You can run on one day, you can do this mileage over the month, but they're just having fun, and it's lighthearted and it's cheesy and there's fun swag. But I wanted to pull these examples out because I think the fun is standing out. So if we can take endurance virtual, can it work and what needs to happen? I think there's several things that need to happen right now for your organization, and our panelists are going to tell us kind of where they are on these stages and what's working for them. But this is a great time, and I know that's hard to hear and maybe agree with, but it's a great time to stop for a moment and reflect. What was working? What wasn't working with your endurance events? So this is a time to change, rebuild, emphasize something that you're doing really well and maybe you want to put more focus on. This is a time to really look at your program as a whole. The next thing is this is a time to communicate, and we're going to hear again from our brilliant minds on the phone, but how are you engaging your community? How are you telling them what's happening? How are you connecting with them, whether your event has been canceled, delayed, gone virtual, whatever that means? How are you loving on the people that love you the most? We know that these endurance folks, I mean, I'm one of them, so I feel okay saying this, they're crazy. They're crazy about endurance. They're crazy about your organization. They're crazy about their fundraising. They recognize or they identify themselves when I say, hi, my name is Megan, and here are the 10 things you need to know about me. One of those things is I'm a team and training athlete. Like, that is part of my identity, and I'm so super proud of that. So how are you taking care of those people right now? The third thing is, what are we hoping to accomplish, right? So eventually, we're going to go back to some sort of normal. I don't think we're at normal stage yet. So whatever that new normal looks like, maybe that is you're going to line up at the start line at the Marine Corps Marathon. Maybe the Marine Corps Marathon looks completely different at this point or in the future. I don't know what that is. But what are you ultimately hoping to accomplish? What is your vision? If you could do anything with this program or your event, what is your long-term vision? We were on a call with a client kind of talking about tactical things, and Katrina, our CEO, said, what is your goal, your vision, your hope? If you could do anything with this event, what would it be? And the person we were talking to said, man, that is a great question. And maybe kind of take a step back and look at this overall. So we're making quick tactical decisions right now, but what does this mean for the future of our program? We're going to talk about going virtual. And the last part is building that team spirit. Again, loving on those people who love you, keeping them involved during this time. Our panelists are doing a great job of that, and we're going to dive more into that with them. Just a couple of examples that I think are really great, and I just want to throw out some things for you to consider if you have not heard of these. And I know that some of our panelists have a very in-depth experience, so we'll talk again more about this here in just a minute. But if you are not familiar, Zwift is a great tool that is free, is in terms of, like, I don't have to buy a $2,500 Peloton. or anything like that. I can put my bike up on a trainer and I can ride my bike virtually by looking at the TV and seeing, you know, being on this course or riding against my friends or doing some type of group ride. I have a good buddy of mine who is a crazy cyclist. I think he has a bike that costs more than like my first car cost me. So he has all the fancy technology, and his bike moves as he's on these trails, and it shakes as he goes over, you know, different terrain and stuff. That is not my Swift experience. I am one of the freebies because I'm still trying to figure it all out. But it is a way to engage virtually with your cycle community. Also want to talk about the buyer/lover. I don't know how many of you on the phone, I know our panelists, I can already see Colin shaking his head. I have literally done races for the medal, right? Like I looked at that medal and I thought, that's cool, I gotta go get that medal. And so one of the things we've talked about for a long time in the endurance space is how do we make them, transition them from buyers to becoming lovers of our event, our community, our organization. Tracy, I'm so glad that you were on the phone today because your community is one of my most favorite. I've been part of your event before, and we'll let you talk more about community, but our goal is to strengthen the relationships with our participants and talk about how much we value you, and because of you, we're doing these things versus, hey, go do these miles or whatever that looks like. We have to be more focused on our folks and what they need and want from us. I'm going to skip ahead because we're going to pick Tracy's brain about community. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my personal endurance experience. So in 2015, it was the 20th anniversary of my dad passing away. And my mom and I went to happy hour because that's where all good ideas generate from. And we came up with this crazy idea that I was going to run 20 endurance events for his 20th anniversary. And arbitrarily, we just threw out a number after I think our second margarita of $100,000. It just sounded good. Why not? And the cool thing about the Leukemia Lymphoma Society at that time, and maybe it's still there, is for every when you raise $100,000, you got to name a research grant. And we thought that would be so cool at the end of this year to march in, and $100,000 for a research grant, maybe that pays for their coffee for the year. I don't know what $100,000 does, but that $100,000 is going to have my dad's name on it. And so I tell this story for two reasons. One, for me, running is my way of telling my dad's story. His picture is on my back. So on race day, people are here or asking me about his story or telling me your dad is proud of you. If I did not have this outlet or connection to tell this story about my dad, I'm not sure that you would see my happy butt at some of those start lines, let alone finish lines. For me, this is an avenue of, one, race day is the best day. There's so much joy. But this is the way that I keep my father's legacy alive. So when we go virtual, what does that mean for the people who are there because of the mission, who are really engaged with your mission? What is the avenue for them to tell their story, for whatever that means for them? So I want you to keep that in mind too when you think about going virtual, is how do we connect with the lovers of our mission and our organization? We're going to talk, sorry, I'm speeding through these because I have wonderful panelists. We're going to talk with Tracy about how they announced their event stuff, and then we're going to talk with Colin about some of the really cool technology they're using. I wanted to throw this up too. I don't know if anybody follows Ironman, but they're doing a virtual Ironman club, which is really neat. Some of these virtual events are really interesting for multiple reasons. One, you don't have to do this Ironman all in one day. So all of a sudden, people who had barriers to endurance now have more of an option to become involved. It's an Ironman over the course of the month. It's a marathon in 2 weeks. It's 13.1 miles in the month of May. So what's happening is more people who maybe necessarily couldn't have come to your event because they can't ride their bike for 7 days, or I can't do the 26.2 mile run, are dipping their toe into, maybe I could try this, or maybe this is something I can do to help cope with stay at home and isolation. I got to get out of this house. These kids who need homeschooling are killing me, and I got to go. I'm going to start running. I've just decided that I'm going to start running. So there's more people dipping their toe into what is this crazy world of endurance. And then the last thing, again, I really think this is awesome. Looking at the fun, how are we engaging with our folks? Is it always just raise some more money? Did you get your miles done? We borrowed this example from Team Fox, and this was a bingo that they sent out. And all you had to, once you had bingo, you submitted it back in for your prize. It was try a new healthy recipe in your kitchen. Watch a Thursday webinar. Let's see, listen to an album you've never listened to. Get 8 hours of sleep. I would like to crunch that one off of my bingo card. Practice social distancing. So it was a fun way just to engage with their community and love on them and hear back from them. All right, this is what I'm most excited about. So panelists, be ready to be off mute. We're super excited to have you. So we had to throw some fun photos in here as well. Just wanted to remind everyone of kind of who is who. So we've got Tracy with AIDS Life Cycle, Colin with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, Chris with Bike MS, and Asher with ALS, the Golden West chapter. So diving in, our very first question, sorry, it gets mad when I don't push the exact button. Tracy, we're gonna start with you. Will you tell us what going virtual has looked like for your event and organization? And maybe start with a little bit about what the event was before you went virtual.
So thanks, Megan. For AIDS Life Cycle, so for those of you that don't know, AIDS Life Cycle is a 7-day, 545-mile bike ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles. It takes place the first week of June every year. So this year we are scheduled May 31st through June 6th. If you do the math, that means we were pretty earlier in figuring out that that wasn't going to happen. And we, on March 17th, announced the cancellation. And I think we were one of the first major endurance events in the country to actually announce a cancellation. We did that for a variety of reasons, which is a different topic than this call is about. We have always had a program called Virtual Cyclist, which is a really lousy name. And in fact, we, Colin, does that sound familiar? Anyway, we embarked this year to start making a change to that. And we rolled out something in February to our virtual cyclist community called My 545. And we were going to actually then in next year rename and rebrand the whole program. So we had a few little pieces and bones around something. And what it's meant for us traditionally is these are folks who couldn't come on the ride, or maybe something happened during the year that between when they registered and they knew they couldn't ride, but they still wanted to raise money. That was the bucket. There was nothing special there. So what we wanted to do was build in some sort of a challenge for folks that would give them something to do and have really something for them to talk about in their fundraising beyond the amazing mission of the two organizations that we support. So we quickly looked at what we needed to do to adjust and switch My 545 to the My 545 challenge for everyone at AIDS Life Cycle. For us, we were right at the part of fundraising. We had already raised $6 million, but we had about 10 more to go. And the agency's like, there's a huge gap as everybody is experiencing. So we were up against that. And we needed to make some really fast tactical decisions. So we built out assets, we built out a whole campaign, and we're able to move and push that really quickly. Of course, what I would say is that it took a minute for the community to get on board. And I think everyone on this call and everyone in the world has gone through different steps of the grief process of what is, what could be, what's lost. And so we had to get through the initial shock for everyone that this event, which this would be the 27th year of the ride, wasn't going to happen. This event is such a part of the community and also rose out of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And so to have this happen because of another epidemic, it's a crazy intersection. It took about 3 weeks for folks to really kind of pick up the mantle and start going with it. We are now, just to give you on the financial side of things, right now we would be raising probably about $100,000 a day. We are in the about $8,000 to $10,000 a day range, but folks are still moving. And we've slowly added in layers, reintroduced our incentives plan and things like that, but really talking with the community and sharing out what people are doing. What was really great was when we framed it, it wasn't about 545 miles. It was about 545 anything. And so we have people who were making and are making 545 masks, people who are doing 545 minutes of yoga, people who are riding their bikes 545 miles or moving for that amount. So, and we have, my favorite one is the guy who has staunchly committed to drinking 545 ounces of wine between now and May 30th. He's committed. And I'm like, 545 ounces? I mean, I could top that, I think. But anyway, so there's a lot of creativity, and our community is super creative. So that's what we did. And I'll stop there because I know there are more questions and more people to talk.
Thank you. Colin, can you tell us a little bit about what going virtual looks like for your big climb and Team in Training?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will try to be short as well, knowing that we have a lot of panelists here. And thanks for having me. Happy to be here, and good to see you, Tracy, by the way. Yeah, interesting thing about Team in Training is that by and large, we do not create our own events. So we find the right partners to work with, and then we are a part of their experience and make the overall event weekend experience something very special. I think a lot of people know what Team in Training is here, so I won't go into that necessarily. But the con in that is that we have to be very reactive as the events make their decision. We were not, in most cases, able to be in charge of the decision-making process. In some cases, we have great relationships and we're part of that decision-making process because we drive so much revenue or so much participation. America's Most Beautiful Bike Ride in Lake Tahoe, for instance, is one of those events that we are the significant party there. But by and large, it's dependent upon the race partner. So for us, that side of going virtual was definitely challenging because we knew that we had to be extremely quick to have a plan and a strategy the moment the race made a decision, because our participants would expect us to have an answer for what are their options and what can they do next and what does this mean for the funds I've already raised and all those pieces. And that was both a challenge, but also an opportunity, because in Team in Training, there's always the next year, there's always another 20 or 30 events to look down the line. And it means we can usher people to their next experience and get them engaged immediately and stay in the community and get them focused and motivated. So we were able to capitalize on that piece quickly. And then in order to really engage with our community, we made sure that every single event that got canceled or postponed, we had some sort of virtual activation occurring that weekend. Having mission videos released through the app or through their text messages the day of, having a coach video out through YouTube that went out to everybody the morning of the event, having just check-ins and like virtual happy hours to celebrate after the fact. Just, at first it was just scrappy. It was like Wednesday an event was canceled, and Friday night we're just like, all right, like what are we doing tonight? We're gonna figure it out. And it's definitely gotten better as we moved forward, and it's allowed us to become a little bit more proactive as we look down the line. And then not understanding and knowing exactly where we will be in fall and winter of this year, and knowing that many of our largest events like Chicago, New York City, those that we raised, 1.5, 2 million at each, what's that going to look like for us? We have to plan for all inevitabilities, but also look at what are the virtual events that we may build or partner with in order to have something to help bolster that revenue. So that was really high level for Team in Training. I'll just say for Big Climb, we had 18 events planned. We immediately tilted because we control these, and we said we're going to do a big virtual climb. And so we wanted to give an opportunity for the organization as a whole, so all of LLS, to really focus on one thing in this fiscal year, where we could put the chapters, the boards, the staff to work to drive revenue now to help fund the mission as much as possible. I'm sure like everybody else here, the biggest impact to us is how we're funding the mission right now. We are a sound business. We are okay right now, but our impact on the ability to fund the mission is being compromised. So Big Climb strategy was, we can create something out of this, usher everybody towards it. Team in Training was community first, and then look down the line to drive revenue later. And then I think that's where I'll end right now. So thanks.
Sorry,
Oh, Megan,
helps if
you're
I
on
unmute myself. Yes, thank you. I just said all of these words of wisdom that no one will ever know because I was on mute. Chris, what does going virtual look like for Bike MS?
Sure. Bike MS, and for those that don't know, Bike MS is that we have a series of 68 rides that happen from March through October in various locations across the country, and we raise $70 million annually. So it is our largest fundraising event for the National MS Society. And so we have gone virtual for part of our series. And so we've made the strategic decision to move all rides from March through July 15th to all virtual. So that's 23 events, which is about 25 million of that $70 million event. We know that we may have to make more changes. We have just held on that decision for now, trying to protect as much revenue as possible for the fall. The reality is we know that those rides, we have some large events that are 5,000 to 6,000 person events that happen on the East Coast in the fall. Those probably will not be able to happen as we know them. So those will most likely have different components as well. But so this move has been a short-term solution. We're working on a long-term solution as well. So the first thing that we've done is really reimagine some of those virtual cultivation events for our cyclists that are normally happening in person by our most key audiences. So that's our team captains. For Bike MS, teams represent 80% of our fundraising dollars. They bring that in, and about 85% of our cyclists are on teams. So we really leaned in hard to those team captains to really motivate people to stay engaged. Because what you're finding, and what we're finding, I'm sure you guys are as well, is it's hard to keep people engaged. You're making a phone call, then what? There's not these in-person events where you're seeing them and meeting them, and you can't do coffees or lunch and learns. And so keeping them engaged is really hard. So we're trying to lean in and do some of those things for them. And we're, segmenting by team captains. We're doing special things with rookie riders. And then, and we have a strong communication plan, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later, Megan, about how we're really leading up to that virtual weekend with our social posts. And so we're doing fun things like, virtual packet pickups where you have a digital bib that you're downloading to, for your event weekend, and a selfie station, and some fun things that people can do and post online. But really we are, in essence, our phase one approach has been turning, to kind of have a Band-Aid approach, just a short-term fix, first of all, is to replace those weekend of events with a virtual experience. And we've, enlisted Strava and Zwift and Facebook Live. It does not replace the experience that we're all used to. And so we know that there has to be a long-term solution, and we are investing in a more long-term approach too, and how this will have legs moving into the future as well. So right now, it's pretty limited with our technology, but we are investing in some different technology using our relationships with Donor Drive, which is our fundraising platform, Charity Dynamics, Zwift, and Strava, and Facebook Live, and really stitching all of that together to host a more robust experience, hopefully by fall. But so right now it's a short-term and a long-term approach. And I know that's very high level, Megan. I know there's other questions too, but that's really the direction that Bike MS is going right now.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to dive in. We're starting high level, and then we're diving in. So that's perfect.
Right.
Asher, will you tell us a little bit about what going virtual looks like? And you have a nice menu of events that have gone virtual. So I know that experience has looked different as you have more time to prep versus this one's tomorrow.
Yeah, so we've had to pretty quickly throw together 5 spring virtual events. So we closed our office in mid to late March, and on our schedule were 4 events in April. Not all of those were endurance events. It started with 2 walks to defeat ALS. Then we had a basketball tournament. We had a 5K, and in May, coming up on May 17th, we have the SoCal Ride to defeat ALS. So for us, very quickly, it's been a kind of a grassroots, homegrown feel to it. Kind of making it up as we go, with no budget whatsoever, because we had to slash our budgets, and we did lower our revenue goals in conjunction with that. But so the thing is, the walks came before the endurance events have, so the endurance events have gotten the benefit from the guinea pigs of the walk. So what we did with the walks was every 90 minutes, there's a mission significance to 90 minutes that I won't go into, but every 90 minutes we would put out a new video segment, and in each of those segments would be somebody from our chapter, would be a board member, would be a constituent telling their story, a team captain telling about why they walk, and of course calls to action. Of course, like, share, follow. Big encouragement to get out there and do a walk your way, and post, whether it's you walking around your living room or taking a walk around your block, or somewhere in between. Share how you're walking and why you're walking, and of course to donate and to fundraise. And it was really kind of a telethon model. It was us putting out the content and asking for a call to action of everybody, and we got some decent participation, and it's been an evolution. So first one, we tried one thing, and then our next walk director said, I want to add some music to this. So every segment, we add a little fun and a music component to it, one musical performance, and that had some good reactions. And then we moved on to our Hoop Fest, which was a basketball tournament, and we added a lot more fun to those videos, a more youthful, more active constituency. We added the Hoop Fest challenge, whereby we encourage people to take any kind of round object and throw it into any kind of receptacle, and post yourself doing that and taking the Hoop Fest challenge and making a donation and so forth. So that all led us to the Jim Tracy 5K, which typically takes place in Golden Gate Park. Obviously, we weren't able to do that this year. What we did do, and what we felt was missing from the first three, was that live coming together component, and that moment, if only a brief moment, to really show everybody that we're all participating in this. We're not just sitting there watching screens. And so what we did was a Zoom start line, and that worked out really well, and that felt really good. So everything that we would say at our start line for a 5K or a ride, we did at the Zoom start line. So we had guest speakers, and let people know why we're running and why we're participating. And then we encourage people to go out and do a run, do the 5K your way. So, and that's really pretty much the messaging that we have going on now is do walk day, do ride day, do the 5K your way. So the Zoom start line was great. We had a yoga instructor come in for 15 minutes. I tried yoga for the very first time in my life even, and she did a yoga warm-up on Zoom, and we had about 100 sign-ins and multiple people in each square, so more than 100 people tuned into that, and that went really well. So for our upcoming SoCal ride, we're gonna do that as well, without a doubt, and we anticipate it's gonna be even bigger and better. And again, we're going to encourage people to go out on a ride in their way, and maybe tap into some of the technology that we're talking about today, Zwift or Strava. So again, it's evolving. Fundraising is down, but certainly not out. Really glad that we just decided to go for it. We didn't cancel anything. We didn't postpone anything. We just pivoted really quickly. And the funds surprisingly came in, and the trend I was telling Megan that we're finding is, since it's kind of like a telethon model, the funds that were coming in nearly doubled day of from what we're used to bringing in. So we're used to, in peer-to-peer, most of the funds coming in beforehand, and then the day of is kind of gravy. But we've done well getting in day of funds, so it's something to consider. And I could go on for hours too, but I'll stop there.
That's great, thanks. Yeah, I'm actually going to skip to our third question, come back to the second one. Colin, I want to start with you in terms of, how are you engaging virtually? Can you talk a little bit about your app and how coaches are taking your role, and how are you connecting with your folks? And Saturday morning trainings look a little different now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first off, the important thing here is virtually engaging is something that probably all of us have been doing for a long time. It feels different right now, but it's something that if you aren't already on Facebook or calling people using text messages on Instagram, different social platforms, then you're probably not in business. I think it's likely we all already have plans with how to use those types of platforms, but it's more now, I think to Asher's point, how do you bring that community together in a live way? and how do you really provide them with an opportunity to really interact when they're missing out on that local piece. And that's been something that Team in Training has struggled with for years. We're a national organization that even before COVID, we're trying to figure out ways to still keep that team of Team in Training, for instance, together when you may have people from all over the country doing one event, and some of those markets don't even have a local chapter because they're in the middle of, Ohio or Nebraska, but doesn't have a chapter office. But we do have an app, and that app's been out for a few years, and that's allowed us to help really centralize that virtual engagement, and that we can really control the timing and the delivery and put rules and guidelines around what our coaches are doing in there and what staff are doing in there. So we can be very proactive with how we communicate. If somebody crosses the finish line, they can get something within a way we control it 100%. But you don't need an app to do that. You just got to be creative. So I would say to sort of sum up how we engage virtually, we have a plan based around, we need to have places for community that speak to everybody. Not everybody wants Facebook. Not everybody wants to be in an app. Not everybody wants to do text messaging or talk on the phone or answer an email, but you have to be in all of those, and you have to connect all of them with your plan in order for people across the demographics to feel like they're being reached out to in the way they want to be engaged. And then we drive them towards a specific opportunity right now, virtually, where they can talk to each other. And that can be everything from a live workout, having that yoga person like Asher had. For us, we have something called Team in Training Live that we just rolled out just for this right now, where it's basically every week we have scheduled live workouts led by our coaches, and we have fundraising clinics happening right now, and we have like little celebrations after the event weekends that are all live. And at this point, we have drafted like what we should be saying as staff to help influence the conversations and whatnot. But I would say it's a very creative process. We're hopefully getting better at it every day. But the biggest point for me is every single bucket you can think of needs to have a plan, and they all need to connect together. And that can be hard, for sure.
Yeah, Chris, anything else you want to add for engaging virtually?
No, I mean, we're doing some similar things. I would just mention too that what I think we're finding challenging is that there's not one solution that fits everybody, and so there's multiple places that people can engage. And not everybody's going to connect with Strava or with Zwift or Facebook Live or the web page, but if you're offering a menu of things, then it allows us to open it up more. And so that's what we're finding. We did just add a virtual landing spot to all of our websites right now, just resources for team captains, just because they wanted, like, where do I go and get this? And which seems simple. We had that before, but they wanted a new virtual place with ideas and ways to talk to one another and a chat function, so that's really helpful. And what we're finding is we have a team captain group on Facebook that has about 1,000 team captains. Again, team captains is one of our main segments. They are talking amongst themselves a lot, and we try not to let that be staff driven. We want them to answer, not us. We are engaging, but they're really engaging with themselves, and that's really continuing that competition and camaraderie that we're not seeing as much right now. So I would say they're helping us a lot by just engaging with each other. So those are the big things I would add for us.
Yep, that's great. Tracy, anything else on engaging virtually?
Well, there's one thing that's really important I didn't say before, which I think gets to this point, and that is the My 545 challenge is the first part of what we're doing. The second part of what we're doing is we have moved to, I am now an executive producer. we are producing a week of content for what would have been the week of the ride. And
oh, wow.
And one of the things that we're doing, so we've teased this to the community. So if anybody is on here from AIDS Life Cycle, keep it on the LD. We are, we'll be starting to tease out to the community this week, AIDS Life Cycle at Home, a Ride, Love, Live experience. And some of the things that happen during the week of the ride, it's not just about riding 545 miles. It's about being in camp. It's about camp stage every night. It's about the communities through which we ride and how important they are. And so we're building a week of interaction. We're having camp stage every night. We're having virtual hangouts each day that are not all day, every day. And we know hopefully people will be back at work and not be able to participate in every single thing every minute of every day. But we want to bring some of the key things that are the spirit of the event to life in a way that we could never do on the ride. You know, we're really limited by the number of people that can come on the ride and who participate in that way. And now we have an opportunity to really expand the walls of that. So I think that's it's what our time is consumed with right now. And everything that Chris and Colin said is the same for us in this My 545 side of things.
Yeah, I love that you're going to be able to engage with donors, just like you said, for the first time, because 545 miles is such a huge undertaking, even for an avid cyclist. Like that's intimidating. So now, you know, my mom, who donates every year, can see like why I do this and what the community brings to that. I think it's so special that you're going to share that with so many more people.
Yeah, it's pretty. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. What is, we're going to dive into this one, and I'm going to structure this question. I'm going to add a little bit because we had a question similar to this. What does fundraising currently look like? What does fundraising look like for your event now? And then if you could also touch on how the heck are you forecasting or budgeting right now? What does this mean? You know, if your event was originally $5 million, any words of wisdom or what we could learn from your experience in terms of how do I keep the people above me with realistic expectations? Tracy, I actually want to start with you because I think you have some really awesome sponsorship stuff happening, and I would love to share a little bit more about what your fundraising is looking like right now.
Sure. Well, I wish I could say I was going to raise that additional $10 million. I don't think that's reasonable. I would also say, I think Colin said this about LLS. I'm really fortunate to work for two agencies that are fiscally very sound and have really good reserves and have a lot of strong things going on. The reality is at San Francisco AIDS Foundation, we're 22% of the budget, so that's a lot. And so the question about how we are forecasting, we're in a really, really wonderful position that we were able to go like in the most conservative case. And I'm happy to say we're beating that on a daily basis. So yay. And we do budget separately for both agencies. So we did some modeling that looked at in the days after the announcement, what were we raising? How much was continuing to be raised? If we took that and projected it out, what does that look like? With that said, we've had some really great things that have happened. And one is we were about to bring on a new sponsor this year. And, you know, actually we have a couple of new sponsors and we were like, well, that's not going to happen since, you know, we canceled the ride. I'm really happy to report that this new sponsor, which we have not announced yet to the community, so I can't tell you who they are, but we closed the biggest sponsorship deal we've ever had for the ride about 2 weeks ago. And that deal is, there's a cash component to it, but there's also a really big campaign that they're building that will help us to raise significantly more money. And so things like that, where we thought, oh, well, that's dead. Don't assume anything is dead. Continue to go after those opportunities. There's a reason why this sponsor was interested in the first place. And there is an intersection of what they're trying to accomplish in their business that is perfectly aligned with what we're doing. At the end of the day, that opportunity is going to be worth several $100,000 to the organizations, and which is great, and more importantly will be a broad reach to telling the story of AIDS life cycle out in the world. So I think there's some really cool stuff that is happening. The other thing that is, you probably actually wanted me to talk about is we also took our existing sponsors and said, how can we honor our existing sponsors and do something with them? And so for all of our cash sponsors, we talked with them, and all but one were down with this idea. And we took their sponsorships and we've made them into challenge grants. And we are, and not just like NPR level challenge grants, but we are doing, so we're right now, Gilead is one of our big sponsors. We started yesterday. We're doing 150 $500 one-for-one matches. So the first 150 people to raise $500 starting yesterday morning until it runs out are getting matched by the sponsorship from Gilead. And we're at about 85 people have met that match right now. So yesterday we raised $50,000 through that, through participant fundraising, and then they'll get matched. And so it'll, you know, it'll show up. it'll go towards their incentives and it'll be great. And it was a way for us to honor our sponsors as well as help to create momentum with fundraising. And it has worked. This is the second one we've done, and it's really interesting to see the boost. And it shows the community, people are still donating. People want to give if they can. So
absolutely.
I love that you're putting it in Megan Rouse's fundraising. That I get to see them, like, it's not this match that we just hope we unlock. No, Megan Rouse got it. And while we know endurance athletes are competitive, like, we all are very aware of where our fundraising thermometer is every single day, right? So I think that is truly incredible. Asher, will you talk a little bit about what you're seeing on actual event day while you're engaging in these different ways? What's happening with revenue that on event day?
So as I had mentioned, we, with all of the video content that we're pushing out, like Tracy and Colin implied, I think we're all becoming television producers, and I do have a television film production background, and my parents are so pleased that I'm able to put my degree to work finally in producing all this content. But so in terms of day of, the call to action remains, fundraise, donate, and as I mentioned, we're seeing a lot of surprising results there. We did do a match as well. It was a small match, but at the same time, we encouraged everybody to take a look at the thermometer, and over the next 2 hours, if we can match those dollars, then that. I'm sorry. So if we do that, those dollars, if we were able to raise the dollars and get the thermometer up to a certain level, then that sponsor would come in and match that amount. So that's day of. But I agree with everybody that the current situation has opened up so many opportunities that we would never imagine, and we're casting a wider net. This is for our sponsors. Suddenly, that's TV time, so to speak, to a wider audience. And for us, suddenly our events are far more accessible to the ALS community. ALS is a devastating disease where people lose the ability to move, among other things. And to get somebody with ALS out of the house, get them dressed, take 3 to 4 hours. And instead of having to do all of that to get to one of our events, it was a goal of ours anyways, make our events more accessible to that target audience. So we're able to count those metrics now and show them to potential sponsors.
That's great. Chris, any forecasting advice? I know you live in forecasting paradise is what I'll call it. Any forecasting advice?
I would say that it's a little bit of art and science, as we all know, especially during this time frame. It's not. I think what we did was lean into our sponsors, so really looking at where those key revenue drivers were first, what were at risk, what was already confirmed, leading into our top fundraisers, our team captains in those teams, because again, 80% of our money comes from teams, and so we were able to really know what that was. But it's really working with your data and your finance people, and then working with your development staff in the field to really know what they're seeing and hearing, because sometimes the two pictures don't match, and you have to really compare notes a lot. And we know that those hardcore data analysts and financial folks are using one set of numbers, and we want to make sure that they're meshing together. So I think my biggest piece of advice is partnering together. It's not always just one-sided, and looking at a lot of different variables that go into forecasting. And it's shifting. I will say that we're seeing what we thought a month ago it's looking better than we thought. So it's going to shift and to continue those conversations as you see it move through.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to note from this panel is that everyone is still fundraising. Everyone is still asking their participants, if you're able
absolutely
to lean in. I did a fundraiser recently in my neighborhood, and that was we raised $16,000 in 7 days, which was insane. The number one thing I heard was I wanted to help and I didn't know what to do. So I think by us offering that, this is an outlet, and this is having people who feel helpless, be part of this. Lightning round, yeah. The very last question that we're going to ask our fabulous panelists is, what is something you are most proud of or excited about in terms of taking your events virtually? It could be as easy as closing the biggest sponsor. Tracy, you got some chats. I don't know if you saw those, but everyone's super excited for you about that. Colin, we're going to start with you, and I'm going to talk for 30 more seconds to buy you time to think. But what is something that you are most excited or proud about, whether it's already happened or is coming up?
Yeah, and this is kind of vague, but the way I've looked at it and seen it over the past few weeks is it's forcing us to be extremely innovative. Like, we are sitting on our call every day as a staff leader team and just throwing things at the board and saying, like, why can't we do that? And the reality is we may have to completely adjust the way we work as not only a campaign, but an organization. And it's forcing us not only in the endurance space, but even in our operational space to really consider how does the organization grow out of this to be able to keep functioning in any sort of environment. So that's vague, but it's also reality. So there you go.
Oh, that's great. Asher, something you're most excited and or proud about, other than using your degree, which we're all very happy for you.
Call my parents, tell them. I'm going to look back and I'm going to say I'm really proud of how we didn't give up. It would have been really easy to say, no, we can't do this. We can't turn this around in 2-3 weeks and do 5 events. This spring, we need to regroup and either postpone or cancel or what. But everybody rallied and understood the importance of fundraising for the community that we serve. And with our adjusted goals, we were able to surpass all of them. So we're doing okay. And so I'm just really happy with, our entire team, that really all of our staff that agreed to take risks. And the fear of the unknown is very, very difficult, but we all agreed together to take the risk, to go for it, and it's paid off.
Great. Chris?
Yeah, I think although this wasn't the fundraising season we all intended to walk through or run through or cycle through, what I am most excited about is that it's opened up a new audience for us by being virtual. This is a huge acquisition tool for us that didn't exist before, and the MS Society had not invested in a virtual Bike MS campaign. I mean, it was similar to, I think, what Tracy was describing. You checked a box. Great, you're going to just ride on your own. Perfect. And you could still raise money. This is different, and so I'm excited that this is going to have a long-term impact on our revenue, hopefully for the positive. So I'm just excited that we've taken a pretty horrible experience and turned it into a much better one. So.
Yep. And last but not least, Tracy.
I'm proud of a lot of things, but I'm most proud of my team. I think we have a very prescribed way of doing business, and I think my team has been flexible and participated in innovating and has stayed positive through what, for all of us, just personally, the loss of the ride it's personal to my team, and I'm really proud of everyone just stepping up, stepping in, and going for it. Yeah, I'm really proud of that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, fabulous panelists. I'm going to put my contact information up here. If you have any additional questions or think of things or want to talk through what it looks like to be virtual or go virtual for your endurance event, please reach out to me. We also have, like I said before, a ton of resources to help during this time. So our website is here as well. It's turnkeyp2p.com. We are happy to hold your hand and walk through this with you. And we may not know the answers. We just got asked yesterday, do you have any case studies of proven fundraising success? And I said, during a pandemic? No, none of us do. So we're all in this together, and we're here to help. So big thank you to my wonderful, fabulous panelists. Really appreciate your time. I know it's a crazy time. I hope if you heard nothing else that you take away that this is something you should look into. This might be the future of what endurance space is. Even if we can go back to physical, this will be a complementary additional way to interact with folks. And I think you heard all of our panelists say that nobody's doing it perfectly, right? We're learning as we go. And I think what's great about each of our panelists is that their constituents are giving them grace. No one's expecting, this incredible right out of the gate thing. We're all in this together. I know, Tracy, yours is probably the most vocal of all the communities. But there is some grace in there, right? And I think their participants want to be part of what this looks like and how can we help. So, and fundraising is happening. Man, write that down. Fundraising is still happening. It is okay to talk to your people about fundraising. We've loved on them, we've checked in on them, and now it is okay. So hopefully those are 3 of your many takeaways.